gentleman by the name of Richard Spencer. He's basically known as a right-wing propagandist, and he's always had these hate politics coming along with him.
Have you ever met Antifa? What are they like?
Daryle Lamont Jenkins is a black activist whose job it is to try to silence people like me.
There is no doubt that the alt-right has been attractive to angst-ridden young men. Frustrated and ambitious young men who change the world.
The author of the Charleston Massacre was radicalized and ultimately committed mass murder based solely on what he read on the internet.
I certainly did not want it to happen, but I'm not going to play into their game denouncing the movement.
Hate speech is protected under the First Amendment, but if what you say does cause some sort of harm, people are allowed to respond. We all got to step up. We cannot ignore what's out there. We got to fight back.
They are doing it for us. It's not me convincing people through rational argumentation. We've entered a new stage where political violence has returned.
As far as I'm concerned, you pick this fight, now fight.
My policy is never back down.
The ideology is a prescription for mass murder.
Breaking news, terror in Charlottesville.
Strong warriors that is about to get worse.
Hey fam, welcome to Punks for Progress. I'm Reverend Aaron. This over here is the specials. This is side 2 of the Ghost Town 12-inch single, which I think side 2 is where it's at because it has this song Why and Friday Night, I believe is the second song. But anyway, we have a really awesome treat for y'all today. I was lucky enough to get Daryle Lamont Jenkins. You may know him from the film Alt-Right Age of Rage. He's also the producer of the award-winning film Skin. Longtime anti-fascist and all-around cool-ass punk rock dude. And he's agreed to join us and hang out, talk with us about fascism, anti-fascism, music, politics, who knows what. So, with no further whatever, Daryle, welcome to Punks for Progress, man.
Hey, thank you for calling me a treat. I've never been a treat before.
Well, it's true. It is for me.
But yeah, a treat, yeah, I work with that.
Excellent, excellent. Well, look, let me gush on you for a moment, comrade.
Yeah, dude, please do. I can use that.
So, people who have followed Punks for Progress for a long time know that I've gone out in the street and no mask and, well, not now because of COVID, but with no mask and confronting fascists, mostly in Berkeley and the Bay Area. And that's why a lot of people have followed our channel. And what I would like to make very abundantly clear to our followers is, Daryle, you were a huge inspiration for me real early on when I started doing this stuff. Because I'll tell you, comrade, it's hard to not get really angry and lose every last bit of your shit with a lot of these people. And I think I do a pretty good job of maintaining my shit and debating them well and staying on point. But what I'm not able to do, and what you are so good at, man, is you stay calm and you smile even when you're talking to some of the most foulest people. And that was how I kind of came across you, as a couple other different videos. Like the first video I think I ever saw that had you in it, you were in DC and there was some chuds with a Kekistan flag. And they were talking their normie, whatever. And you're like, nah, that flag is a Nazi flag. And you're this. And I was like, whoa, who's that dude? And then you're popping up in some more of our feeds, and just always that calm way about you, clearly very well informed on the people you're interacting with there. But yeah, that was an inspiration to me. In all honesty, comrade, was that, like, I gotta be at least 1/10 as calm and sort of confident as this dude is. And so I appreciate that influence. And anyway, I don't know if there's a question buried in there or not, but
I want to thank you for that too, because I mean, look, I can definitely appreciate the anger. I can tell you that right now. I can definitely appreciate it when people just say, you know what, fuck this, I gotta wail into this son of a bitch. But it's like, with me, I mean, it comes out from time to time. I mean, later on in that video, you saw I snatched the sign out of Richard Spencer's hand. So it comes in.
right.
It comes in
Right.
and goes out just as quickly. Depends on the situation. I mean, I think with me, because I spend so much time listening to these idiots, it's kind of like I kind of like how should I say, devise a strategy for when the time does come that I have to deal with them, and then they can't handle it, and I'm just having a ball. Really.
Well, and that is, I think, as it got easier for me, it was because I'll tell you, so I'm just an old punk rocker. I'm almost 50. I think we're pretty close to the same age.
I turned 52 last week.
Okay. So I remember what went down in the late 80s and early 90s and stuff, and the struggle back then, the appropriation of skinhead culture by boneheads and stuff. And, and I was harassed pretty hard as a young skinny kid by some Nazi boneheads, and which made me go on and want to learn all this stuff. But it's when the concept of Antifa started bubbling up to the surface, it really did come onto my radar via punk rockers doing it, and punk rockers using this word. And I was like, okay, wait a minute, I don't think I actually know this word, and I need to know because I'm a punk rocker, and if I don't know literally everything about my scene, I feel like I'm like failing somehow, right? And but so the first few people I reached out to, in trying to learn more about Antifa, it became abundantly clear that it's not Antifa that's what you need to be learning about. It's who Antifa's telling you about that you need. And that's when it just became really quick. Okay, I need to know everything I need to know about these Proud Boys and Identity Europa and all this stuff. And the more I learned that, the more confident I was and could calmly, when they would espouse a talking point, have a retort. So
Exactly. And I think with the punk scene in particular, when you start talking about these various scenes out there, we're the ones that really started spearheading the more aggressive approaches to these clowns. I mean, granted, when you have had groups out there in the past that will get hardcore. I have old white Aryan resistance videos that Tom Mesker mailed to that shows that folks back in the 70s and 80s will come for them hard. But we didn't wait for rallies to happen in the scene. I mean,
right.
If we saw you, we did you. And that was the way it went. I mean, that's where, you talk about, you go to shows and you see a Nazi in your show, and it's like, we don't want you here. We don't want to dance with you. We don't want to sing with you. Right. This is not your scene. You got to go. If you have a problem with us, what are you doing here? And so that's what started groups like Sharp actually came in basically to take skinhead culture away from the boneheads. ARA took the shows and the culture away from the Nazis. FSU did it even more when you talk about up in Boston. And, it's something that basically said that, look, if you're going to be in this scene, rule number one, we don't punch down. It's basically about you come as you are. I mean, all the things that have rejected you out there in the mainstream, we don't do that here. So along comes these Nazis and say, well, why not? And then we beat their ass and go, this is why.
I think people probably don't really remember what a presence these Nazi racist people had at punk rock shows. Like, punk rock has really grown into a very close knit, strong, for the most part, I think, kind of safe community of like minded people. I can remember, so I was in Southern California mostly, and then a little later I went up north into Reno, which had a serious problem. There was basically a handful of boneheads that were just terrorizing this entire town. But I remember it was a lot of backyard shows in the Inland Empire area, and you'd show up and it would either be a bunch of suicidals that were there first or a bunch of boneheads that were there first.
When you say suicidal, you mean ST?
ST, suicidals, yeah. The straight, a lot of white people, but definitely Latinx people and whatever. But they were wearing the bandanas and the Dickies and that kind of stuff, and like following that early Mike Murr model, right? And
remember, I'm from East Coast. I mean, I've been an ST fan since How Would I Laugh? All right, so I'm just like because that was when I came into the scene actually. Around, I would say. I got into the scene for the first time in like '90. That's when I started hanging out with groups before they were signed, like the Bouncing Souls and Headstrong. These were the groups that we had in New Brunswick, where I'm at right now. And so the West Coast had a lot of that stuff going on.
Right.
We had a lot of our stuff going on, and eventually, they meet. And
exactly. Well, and that was the thing, is either it depended on, look, it would always end up being this clash between the Nazi boneheads, and really their target would be suicidals, because what they're broadcasting that we're proud. They didn't use the terminology Latinx back then, but we're proud Hispanic, Latin, whatever, right? And and that's the end of the freaking show. And finally, and that was the Southern California model. But everywhere you went, there were different versions of that. And this is what we talk about, youngsters, millennials, and Gen Zs who I just adore, especially for being out in the streets the way they are. But this is what we talk about when we say that shows were dangerous.
Well, I gotta be real. In Jersey, we didn't have, at least in this area where I'm from, we didn't have a huge bonehead problem. You start going to South Jersey, yeah, you do. You start going into Philly, oh hell yes, you do. And so when you start talking about people down there, yeah, they really had their fun. I mean, because then you would start talking about groups like Aggravated Assault, and the Atlantic City Skins, and EHS, Eastern Hammer Skins, were rolling at the time with their Hispanic girlfriends that they tried to pass off as Italian. It was a crazy time down there, and there was only but a few times where it came up here to like Central Jersey, and it went very briefly. It went very briefly. I'm looking at a framed patch of a framed Atlantic City Skins patch that I have that I took off of the guitarist of one of the groups, Aggravated Assault, when they accidentally came into New Brunswick. So, but it was it was relatively quiet on that, but it wasn't like we were ignorant to what was going on, and we was all about trying to deal with it whenever it did.
Well, listen, I could chat with you all day reminiscing about early punk rock, because I would love to hear your stories, and I would love to share a few with you. But I think it's relevant to, especially to put things in context for what the majority of our conversation is going to be, which is what's going on with fascism right now, right? But before we get into that, I think inquiring anti-fascist minds would like to know, Daryle, do you have a political label for yourself? How would you? Clearly you're a leftist.
I mean, the reason why you never really hear me talking about that is because from time to time I'm engaging with people, and I don't want to be defined early on, so I just basically put that on the back burner. But that doesn't mean I won't define myself. I've always considered myself an anarchist. Excellent. I've always have. Well, not always have. I think for the most part, when I started getting involved in politics, I was very much a liberal, but but then when I moved to Cleveland and started hanging out with some more hardcore crowd, I started leaning a little bit more leftist, and I will say I'm a leftist. But when I just started observing what it is I was about and what direction I was going in, it definitely is anarchism. It's definitely anarchism. Anarchism in America, which I want to do a watch party on Facebook at some point, really helped me to define, I should say, where exactly I was going to go politically. My influences politically aren't going to be your typical influences. This is not going to be Bakunin. It's not going to be Kropotkin. It's going to be Whoopi Goldberg and Dick Gregory.
Word.
Believe it or not, I mean, there is.
Well, no, can I say, look, a lot of people now know Whoopi because of The View. And I can say, as a kid growing up in the 80s, like Comic Relief, and I mean, and they'll talk about her role in The Color Purple, which was, of course, wow. But it's so much more than all of that. She was so involved in so much and kind of a really vocal person for a lot of like struggling and poor people and marginalized people and stuff. Like, she really was an awesome voice that was rare in mainstream, spaces.
That's it. That was exactly it. But Whoopi Goldberg, when she first came out, I used to listen to, and this was when I was in the Air Force, so you know how much of an impact this had on me. For me to just go totally departing from whatever it is I was doing there. She had a comedy album, which was actually something recorded from an HBO special called Fontaine, Why Am I Straight? It was one of her characters that was a junkie. And
right. I forgot all about that character. What an amazing, powerful character.
A heroin addict with a PhD.
They got the Diamond Exchange, Van Gogh Museum, the ballet. And in the middle of this long-ass list, I see this name that I think I recognize because it said the Anne Frank House. And I wondered, if it was the same chick. So I said, I'm going to go check the pad out, So I walk in. And immediately I'm hip to the fact that it's a museum. And they got a lady sitting behind the information desk. She got all these pamphlets talking about the Anne Frank House and what to do and why they're there. And behind you, there were all these huge pictures that look like they suspended in midair. And attached to these pictures are headphones. Now, the photos are of Amsterdam and Holland during the war, and the headphones give you the narration that goes with the sequence of the photographs. And while I was checking that and the architecture of the building, my eye was caught by a glimmer of gold off to the left. That I felt driven, to go investigate, And it's funny, because sitting on a wooden pedestal with claw feet encased in a see-through box was an Oscar. And I thought to myself, what the fuck is Oscar doing here? And I read the thing, and it said presented to Miss Shelley Winters for her portrayal of Mrs. Van Dam in the movie The Diary of Anne Frank. And I looked at that and I said, get it, Shelley. Yeah, Michael, that told me Shelley was not no bullshit liberal writing checks and mailing them off. Told me she was a supporter of the Anne Frank House. So much so that she wasn't asking Anne Frank's name, huh? Turned around and mailed it to them so everybody going in and out would know she was a supporter. I thought it was really hip. Shit, I took my scarf off to Shelley. Yeah, man. I took my motherfucking scarf off. Yeah, and as I was perusing the area, I noticed a small staircase leading up to a big bookcase, and I'm into books. I got a PhD in literature from Columbia. So I know you don't think I was born a junkie. Now, I have an education, I got a PhD I can't do shit with, So I stay high so I don't get mad. I went on up the stairs, because I wanted to see this one book. So, I pulled on the book, and when I did that, the bookcase opened up. And on the other side, it was a whole other room. Now, wasn't nobody up there saying, don't go in. Wasn't no signs. And I walked in. And the first thing you see when you cruise into this room, man, is a row of huge windows. And all the window panes are blacked out, so ain't no sunlight coming in. And you look at the walls that are surrounding these windows, and they're covered in this kind of wallpaper. It's got little flowers on it. And you get up close enough, you can tell at one time it had been tan. But now, of course, you know, it was old, it was brown with age and water spots and peeling off the walls and strips. And on these walls was pictures of movie stars from like the 30s and 40s, Myrna Lloyd Carroll, beautiful black and white pictures. And when I was looking at that, I happened to turn my head and see the skylight. And I said, oh my, I'm in the room with Anne Frank and her family head. And that kind of like threw me, you know, because this ain't something I was really on top of, you know, in terms of, no, it wasn't, you know. In terms of history, my forte is American history from the 20s to the present time, you know. Now, why is that hard to believe, huh? I mean, I'm a junkie, I'm not stupid. So, like, I was checking out, you know, the differences, because, like, here, we knew what was happening. Things like the Civil Rights Movement was a little bit different over in Europe, man, because the Jews wasn't ready. See, they've been living there, integrated into these areas as well as they could be. Because they thought of themselves as Germans or Austrians or whatever. And when these people changed on them, started calling them nasty names and turned them in, they turned around and said, well, hey, we've been through this kind of thing before. You know, this is going to pass. And when they realized what was happening was real, it was too late. You know, and they ended up in the camps and leaving and going into hiding, and that kind of blew me away too, because like I always thought when you went into hiding, it was like moving from one apartment to another. You know, because everybody I ever knew who went into hiding, I knew where they were. You know, the only people who didn't know was the police. You know what I'm saying? But these folks were stuck in this room for 2 years, and it wasn't like they was living. They got in there, they had 20 hours a day of non-movement, man. Non-movement, no noise. They sat with no sound.
That story, that whole thing that she did in that comedy album. I sometimes quote from that on a regular basis, even up to this day. The thing about her, the thing about Whoopi Goldberg at the time was that I was trying to figure out as always, trying to figure out what direction am I going in. And this is the time when I started looking into, started the doxing of Nazis and stuff. And she came off as kind of like, there is a way to be black and be and still build beyond your blackness. I mean, because every last one of us has to recognize that, yeah, this is who I am. I am a black man. I am proud to be a black man. But that is not the totality of me. But I know a lot of people might raise an eyebrow, but that is not the totality of me. There is so much more. And I think the reason why I want to express it like that is to say, hey, look, we are all living in fellowship with one another.
Word.
It doesn't mean that you're discarding it. You can't discard it. You should never discard it. But also recognize how it is in conjunction with everything else in the world. Now, and that's what Whoopi Goldberg brought to the table. It helped me to understand exactly how a political vision, she gave me a political vision that helped me to understand how to put everything in conjunction as she did. Dick Gregory, on the other hand, Dick Gregory was a comedian who became very, very serious during the Civil Rights Movement. And I would read his books. I would read his books from the 60s and from the 70s. And, you know, when you're a kid and you're reading about the Civil Rights Movement and stuff like that, there is a sanitized version that Dick Gregory did not give you in his books. Not at all. I mean, he basically broke it down as to why things, and what was important for me, that it was written in real time. It was written during the Civil Rights Movement. I mean, there wasn't no swearing or anything like that, but it was kind of like, he kind of made it clear to me just how brutal things could be. And his writings help you to understand why they were doing things that particular way, and how pissed off he was at everything going on. So I basically just used to read a lot of Dick Gregory back then. I had some issues with his conspiracy theories later on in life, but truth be told, the man was solid up until the day he died,
Absolutely.
to be real. People ask who I am. I would tell you flat out, somebody asked me that a while back, and I said, I'm a libertarian in the classic sense.
Word.
Not like the fascist-leaning libertarian BS. I'm talking about what libertarianism is supposed to be. My friend Jenny would tell you about anarchism, that anarchy is about not recognizing authority that doesn't deserve to be recognized.
There we go.
Not waiting for people to do things when you know they have to be done. I mean, so I guess that's where you can place me. I think I might have confused a whole bunch of people.
It didn't confuse me. That was all music, man. That's what all of that was. I am an anarchist. I call myself an anarcho-syndicalist. So, and you're talking about notions of mutual aid.
I'll tell you that much.
Well, right. And, I think the followers of our channel understand. We've done a lot of stuff about exposing how ANCAP is an oxymoron. It's a thing that doesn't exist. And how, libertarian socialism, it was just another way to say anarchist before the term had been demonized later for various reasons and whatever. But I'll just tell Daryle, I really appreciate you taking the time to explain all that and to share that with all of us. But so
I think really I think it was important for me to explain it, because I think a lot of people are trying to understand exactly not just where I'm coming from, but where they are coming from as well. So where do we go from here after everything is all said and done? I mean, when I talk about here, I mean, what's going on in this day and age? What's going on in these past couple of weeks? Because we see what happened after May 25th, how everything started blowing up. And the question is, how do we keep the momentum going to the changes that we want are realized? And number two, excuse me, how do we make sure that it doesn't get co-opted? And that's an important thing.
That's such a crucial point, and that's a constant struggle.
That's where the ANCAPs come in. That's what the concern about the ANCAPs come in.
I mean, the fascists is all about. So let's get into that then, Daryle. And let me just set it up by saying this. Like, look, I became proactively doing anti-fascist activity, I guess is the way to describe it. Going out and confronting and organizing counter demos and working with other people. Probably really when alt-right hit the street. When they left the Gamergate chat and hit the street, that's when I first started getting involved. But I do understand that fascism it could be from day to day, but really it's kind of like year to year. It just becomes a completely different thing, has to repackage itself to react to the contemporary social conditions. And it's a constant effort of co-opting and appropriating whatever is the predominant culture at the moment and trying to twist it in such a way that's useful to bolstering fascism. Now, look, we're not hearing so much about, they're still Proud Boys, don't get it wrong, but we're not hearing about them as much. We're not hearing about Identity Europa as much, probably thanks to Unicorn Riot, right? And their leaks and stuff and various other pieces that have come out. But Boogaloos has kind of come to the fore, I would say, especially during all this recent uprising stuff and the response to George Floyd. And so I guess my question is, what is causing you the most concern? Which groups what are you looking at the most, I guess, in terms of the most immediate fascist threat?
Well, I'm going to keep it on the Proud Boys there.
Okay.
Keep it on the Proud Boys there. I think the Boogaloo crowd, that's going to phase out pretty quickly, only because they already started killing people and they're killing cops. So
right.
So that's going to be a problem that is going to take care of itself. But that doesn't mean we can't accelerate the shit. So if you see them around, like I know one knucklehead when I started dealing with that Boogaloo crowd, it was only during the Branch Covidian rallies, the reopen rallies, that I started just jumping into it, particularly because there's a dude named Paul Miller who is just right up the road from where I'm at, who does regular Instagram things under the name Gypsy Crusader. If you go on Instagram and you look up Gypsy Crusader, you'll see him all over the place. He has various accounts. And he gave me an idea of exactly what the Boogaloo was. He said in one of his videos it was the second Civil War that will happen when the right feels it cannot win national elections anymore. Now this dude, now I know the Boogaloos like to say they're pretty libertarian. You have they're not racist or anything. They always say that.
Right.
And they say they probably are best friends. We're on the same team and all this BS. Paul Miller is straight up Nazi. If you look at some of his stuff now, he is pure Nazi. I mean, it's pure fash, everything. I mean, because he has a Telegram channel called the Crusader News Network. He fancies himself a Crusader. He's very anti-Muslim, and you see Hitler on it all the time. His Instagram page is loaded with Patriot Front stuff. He's always hyping up Patriot Front. This guy's been doxxed as of last year because he was part, by the way, of that Proud Boy fight that happened back in November 2018 in New York City.
Oh, okay, the one in the Upper East Side, outside the Gavin McGinnis thing. Gavin pulled out that sword and shit.
Yeah, he didn't get in trouble. I mean, Paul Miller was there. He was swinging, but he never got caught. He never got busted. He went on TV talking about how he was there, but nothing really happened to him. Now we see him part of that silly ass Boogaloo crowd. But the thing is about him, he got doxxed because aside from that, because he was over there calling for people to assassinate Ilhan Omar. He's cheering on the Nazi who killed a bunch of people at the mosque in New Zealand. You know, I mean,
wow.
He's trying to dox Bill Gates to see if somebody can set his house on fire with him inside. All of this is on Instagram, by the way. So here we go again with something owned by Facebook that they can't seem to get rid of.
Well, I'll tell you, I think maybe the reason the Boogaloo thing is so on my personal radar is, I'm in Nevada, and I'm in the state of Cliven, Bundy, and the Bundy Ranch folks, the same folks who then later went up and took over the bird sanctuary and got the boxes of dildos in the mail and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, those were good times.
Hey guys, welcome to Hip Hughes History. I thought we would take a crack at explaining what's going on in Eastern Oregon, where a militia group has taken over a federal administration building of a wildlife refugee center, and it's causing a lot of hay. How about that? But what we really need to do is explain to you who Cliven Bundy is and kind of what's going on between some of the ranchers in Nevada and the federal government, not just Nevada ranchers, but Western ranchers. We really have to backtrack ourselves to the 19th century to try to explain any of this. And we all know, of course, that most of those Western lands, and specifically Nevada, was garnered by the United States from the Mexican War when it was ceded to us. And then Nevada became a state, of course, in 1864. But what most people don't know is Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, which gives Congress the ability to kind of set conditions for statehood. And there was a bunch of laws passed for these Western states, and they were called enabling acts, which basically gave the federal government ownership over uninhibited, unused land in these Western states, so it could be utilized for the best interest of the whole United States. And Nevada signed off on this, and that's kind of the way that it is. Over 80% of the land in Nevada is technically owned by the federal government. But of course, there are many ranchers who use this federal land, and one of them is the name Cliven Bundy. There he is right there. Now, Cliven is a member of the Sovereign Citizens Movement, and personally, as an individual, he rejects the authority and the legality of the United States government. To these sovereign citizens, to Mr. Bundy, the most powerful person in the world is the local sheriff. But this really all began in 1989, when the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service designated the western tortoise, the turtle, as an endangered species. And they used this new classification to basically create some regulations to preserve some of that land in Nevada. And some of these regulations dealt with the grazing of cattle on federal land, as well as the use of off-road vehicles to try to make this land usable for generations to come. So Cliven Bundy used much of that federal land near his ranch. His family has owned the ranch for more than 100 years. He's a Mormon. They've settled that land back in the 1800s. And he basically refused to pay anymore or to reduce the amount of cattle that were grazing on these lands, claiming that the federal government had no right to do that they didn't own the land, that the state owned the land. So he refused to pay the fines that started to rack up. And in 1993, his license was revoked. He wasn't supposed to have any cattle on that land. But of course, he didn't pay the fine and he didn't remove the cattle. And this has been going on now for 20 years. And it's gotten violent at sometimes. Some members of the Sovereign Citizens Movement sent pipe bombs to the U.S. Forest Service in Carson City in the mid-1990s. So it's gotten pretty serious. And there's been a couple court cases, Bundy versus United States, where Bundy has gone to the federal courts saying that they had no right to do this, that in fact it was the state of Nevada that owned this land and he shouldn't have to pay these fines, which have now accumulated to over $1 million. And of course he lost both of those court cases and he still refused to pay. In August of 2013, there was a letter sent to him giving him 45 days with the threat of the cattle being removed by the Bureau of Land Management. Of course, he ignored that. And then this all came to a head in April of 2014, where the Bureau of Land Management showed up at the ranch to try to remove the cattle. And this is where Bundy put out a call to his followers, to militiamen from across the western United States, to gather at his ranch to fight what he saw as this unjust taking of his private property. And this confrontation, which didn't involve any bullets being fired, certainly involved rifles being pointed at the federal government. One of the wildlife trucks was rammed by an ATV. One of Bundy's sons was tased, and it started to get pretty heated. There were some people on the side of Bundy that were arguing that women and children should be put up front, so if there was some kind of event, that it would look like the federal government was shooting women and children. But needless to say, the Bureau of Land Management de-escalated all of this by just kind of walking away from the situation, saying that it was too hot, it was too heavy, something bad was going to happen, and they would get the cattle some other way. After this occurred, Clive Bundy ordered the sheriff to de-arm all federal officials and bureaucrats in Nevada, and of course they didn't do that. That made him very mad. But that's kind of where that situation stands right now. Bundy has never really been punished for his $1 million fine or for refusing, to follow court orders of any of that jazz. But now we're in Oregon, and how did that happen? Well, Dwight and Stephen Hammond, these were two guys that set fire to some of these lands that they claimed that they owned, were state lands that the federal government didn't own, and they were convicted. They were convicted of arson, and they were sent to prison where they had to show up the other day. And that's when members of the Bundy family and the Hammond family, along with about 150 armed militiamen, took over this facility in eastern Oregon as a stand, as saying basically that this building isn't owned by the federal government, it's owned by the people, and they're basically showing force to say that we're not going to take it anymore. So that's basically the situation. You have the cattle grazing thing going on in Nevada, you have the arsons, now you have this Oregon facility being taken over by the militia.
But, these are the people that took up arms to basically steal Bureau of Land Management land, public lands to graze cattle on, that has been in their family for generations, Daryle, right? Mm-hmm. And these people terrify me a little bit, okay? And these are the people that, Reno has a very sort of sophomore civil rights community. It doesn't have a long history of being a strong leftist foundation. We had a pretty solid Occupy here. We've had IWW here, but we haven't had any of the other communist parties here. It's just a small population, but a lot of the people, they're really coming out in support of this movement since the murder of George Floyd, but they're not recognizing so much that the militia here listen, Cliven Bundy is coming out saying that he believes George Floyd was murdered, and Cliven said Black Lives Matter.
Was that Cliven or Ammon Bundy?
It might have been Ammon.
Ammon was the one that everybody's mad at right now because he's on that side.
It's owned me because I simply was going to go to a rally with the Black Lives Matter in support of defunding the police, because yes, the police need to be defunded. And anybody who don't understand that is just somehow must be, I'm trying not to be, too poignant here, but must have a problem.
My man hates federal agents. My man hates the federal government. So he's gonna, I'm actually surprised that he's the only one that I've seen so far.
Well, and so I can tell you, and then I promise I want to hear your thoughts. But
no problem.
Which is, and there's a video on our channel for the Reno BLM March. If people want to take a look at it. But there was a militia guy that came out, and of course he has the proud infidel patch on his thing, right? And he gets confronted by me and a couple of other black bloc cats, and he's really happy to say Black Lives Matter. But then, of course, we push him and say, well, say trans lives matter. Say Muslim lives matter. And he wouldn't do it.
Why are you here? Do you believe the cops murdered George Floyd?
I know they did. I watched the video.
Okay. So what are you here for?
Whatever.
So why are you here? See, I'm here to stand up for justice for George Floyd and to say that Black Lives Matter. I'm just curious why you're here.
I'm here because that's what the police did to him.
Oh, is that it? Black Lives Matter now?
So you're an anti-government militia is what you are. Are you a sovereign citizen?
No.
No, okay.
No, I'm a sovereign citizen. Fine.
Anyways, kid.
Yeah, that's kind of how that works, fascist.
Get the fuck out. Go. You're not welcome. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter.
Right. They do, but this isn't about what you have to say right now.
Yeah, white dudes had enough to say, homie. Nobody wants to hear your white boy shit.
That's the problem. You're white and not saying anything.
Can't even say the words Black Lives Matter at a Black Lives Matter march.
So why are you here defending them?
I'm not defending them.
I just heard you say that you fucking hate Muslims.
Yeah, you said all Muslims are violent and shit, right?
Say it right now. Say Black Lives Matter.
Say Muslim lives matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Say Muslim lives matter.
That's all you need to say.
Say Muslim lives matter.
Say
Everybody's lives matter.
Nah, say Muslim lives matter. None of that Nazi-ass all lives matter racist
lives
bullshit,
matter.
Holmes.
Period.
No, Black Lives Matter. Taking away from the issue. Black Lives Matter.
Black lives.
Black Lives Matter.
To our capitalist imperialist bosses, Black lives don't matter. We're trying to equalize that so that they do matter. You're not fighting for that.
All lives can't matter until
You're here to make a mockery of it, Chud. Fuck 3%ers, man. Fuck the militia. And fuck you, bigot.
You're not fucking welcome.
But he was framing himself like, no, I am here in solidarity with George Floyd. I'm on your side. I'm on your team. And I'm going, this is Bundy Ranch people. And so maybe I'm a little more hyper attuned to the militia right now because of being Nevada and because of recent experiences. But I appreciate you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that the militia groups need a talking to. Yeah, I mean, I've been dealing with militias ever since Linda Thompson's nonsense back in '94, and I saw them right away as being a kind of gender clan, kind of gender neo-Nazi group. I mean, with black members and everything, that kind of thing. And that's one of the things that really annoys me about the right. Whenever they see one thing that used to work in the mainstream not working, they just basically position themselves so that they can still do the things that they want to do without getting into too much trouble. And that's what the militia groups are. All they have to say is, I'm not racist, and they can still do all the things they did when they were the Klan. All right? So it's like that dude that you saw. I mean, it's not to say that you have some people that are conflicted, I should say. I mean, but my attitude about that is talk to them, but recognize it's what Theodore Roosevelt said: speak softly, but carry a big stick, because that stick might be needed.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that everybody likes to talk about, especially a lot of folks in the mainstream, love to talk about how I help people get out of the white power scene and all that. And but if you listen to the right, you'll hear some of them go, "Well, Daryle Davis is better at it and all that." And it's like, Daryle Davis has a way of doing things that I generally cannot do. And Daryle Davis will go and talk to the Klan and count them among his friends and such, and then they seem to understand that their way is not the right way, and then they get out. Okay. my attitude is, yeah, I'm willing to talk to you. Yeah, I'm willing to have an open door policy. But if you're still playing, I still got to boot for your ass.
Word.
I mean, it's got to be real like that.
Yeah.
Because as I always tell people, my obligation is going to be to the people that you will hurt, or you have hurt. My obligation is to them. So yeah, you can talk to those folks. You can help them. You can have some sort of association with them, but you got to still recognize them for who they are. They still might be trying to hurt you even while they're talking to you.
That's right.
So, and that's where the problems come in. They got to prove themselves. Once they start getting involved in that BS and start trying to appeal to us in some way, they got to prove that they're not going to be what we have seen them be for generations upon generations. I mean, and when it comes to libertarians, I always one of the things that I've been telling people, especially after watching Hamilton, is that and I tell them this. They say, look, I consider you guys to be the next to be the generation, to be the parallel to the founding fathers. That is not a compliment.
Right.
Because the founding fathers co-opted what those farmers in the fields and what Tom Paine written, what they had in mind. They couldn't understand why their money was going to a king 3,000 miles away. And don't worry, I'm cognizant about the fact that we're talking about colonialists here. I understand that. But the truth of the matter, but beyond that, the reason why they wanted revolution is because they wanted to be autonomous. They wanted to be independent. They wanted to build their own. Along comes the so-called founding fathers and the land, which were basically landowners, and i.e. the rich, who says, hey, this is our opportunity to take everything.
Right.
So they become the leaders of the revolution, and when they win that revolution, what happens? All those farmers weren't allowed to vote. You had to own land in order to have any say in what direction this country went into. That's what libertarians are. Today's libertarians.
Right.
We have to, those who are involved in the anti-fascist scene, those who are involved in any kind of anti-fascist work, have to recognize libertarians are not our friends if they if they have those intentions for us. They are not here to try to do anything positive for us as a people, just for themselves. That's all I gotta say on that.
No, I so appreciate it because like, look, it's like the militia movement and the libertarian movement has traditionally been very closely related to like the sovereign citizens, people that would shooting cops in the face and stuff, and then what happens is, you know, Ferguson, right? And this term Black Lives Matter pops up in the lexicon, and these guys go, "Nuh-uh, cops. We care about the people that are murdering the black lives that you're standing up," which was just fundamentally and 110 billion% a racist manifestation, a reactionary manifestation to Black Lives Matter. But it was fascinating because these same people who have spent their lives hating cops are now embracing the no, blue line, we love cops. And some of them I think are kind of like, they're getting over that weird contradiction that they embraced for a while, and they're kind of going back to the, yeah, we hate cops too thing. Does that make sense to you or no?
I don't know if they're, when you take a look at the Branch Covidian rallies just before everything happened with George Floyd, I mean, it's amazing how much of a difference you would see. I mean, so in real time. This year was a yin and a yang that you can actually watch. You saw them out there with their guns, with just straight up strapped up, going to state houses talking about they want to behead the governor. Right. And all the cops out there saw these massive amounts of people and just stared them down.
Right.
And nothing happened. They all were able to go home with
no tear gas, no rubber bullets.
No tear gas, nothing like that. Enter us. No weapons. No intentions of hurting anyone. The cops start attacking with the tear gas, with the pepper spray, with the rubber bullets and everything, and it's on. and it's on. I got to tell you, though, I got to be real about it. When they sit there and talk about, because it's amazing to me how people would call Black Lives Matter cowards. It says, no, we fought the cops without your guns.
Word.
And the attitude that I have is that libertarians, especially with after Portland, everybody's starting to sing this after Portland. You always talked about government tyranny.
Right.
Always talked about the government coming in and trying to overrun the states, not recognizing the states' rights as we are trying to assert ourselves. You were supposed to be around free speech, and here you have as an army coming in Lafayette Park in D.C. and later on in Portland, trying to take that free speech away. Now you have excuses for not being out there. And my attitude about that is, that's okay. We knew who you were already.
Oh yeah,
we didn't need you.
So they built silos and stocked them with like years and years worth of food and ammunition in preparation for when unmarked federal officers gaffle people up off the street. And then when it happens, they're like, cool.
Yeah, that's the attitude. And what makes it even worse is that you see when they are out there, this is the important thing to remember. When they are out there, you see the camaraderie between them and the cops. Cops giving them the okay sign, cops shaking their hand, cops with 3%er tattoos, as it was the case in North Carolina.
Jesus.
It's not surprising. I mean, I remember writing on Twitter. Never in my 30 years of doing this have I ever seen a right-wing rally being attacked by the cops.
Not once.
And I wrote that because that day there was a vigil being held for the woman in Seattle that was ran over by some scumbag.
Right.
It was a vigil. And for some reason, the cops felt the need to attack it. And it was like, this has gone beyond the pale because we really have to start doing something about it. They're actually killing us because we believe we.
Let's talk about this, Daryle. Listen, I'm really conflicted on how to talk about and frame these motherfuckers running over protesters with their cars, because I'm concerned and nervous as a leftist that I don't want to normalize the concept of fucking running people over with their cars. I don't want to contribute to the normalization of that. You know, these Reddit threads and 4chan threads, they're talking and making memes and jokes about this shit all day. But there's been at least 70 accounts that...
Yeah.
And
not just running over people. They were also talking about they're also shooting. We just seen
That's right.
We've seen Garrett Foster, and now if everything is true, that person who shot Garrett Foster traveled about an hour and a half to Austin, Texas, to, as we've seen in his social media, kill Antifa, to attack Antifa. For some strange reason, the police let him off.
What do you know about that? You know,
and then and let him go just so when we have a vigil for Garrett Foster down there, he shows up to mock it.
In Reno, Daryle, it was going on 6 years now. There was an Indigenous Peoples Day, you know, not Columbus, but so few people from the local tribes had done a rally, marched to, you've been to Reno, you know the Reno Arch on Virginia Street.
I've never been to Reno.
Oh, you haven't? I thought you'd been here before. Well, there's a big neon sign that covers the Virginia Street, the main strip that all the casinos are on. Okay.
I've seen pictures of it.
And about 2-3 blocks from there is what we call Believe Plaza. And there's a big statue of the letters that make out the word believe. So most of our rallies and marches begin in Believe Plaza because it's an amazing place to rally, right? A huge statue that says believe. But on this occasion, I'd say, 15, 20 people from the Indigenous, they had a rally. They marched up to the Reno Arch, and we're going to stand under the arch for literally like 10 minutes, have prayer, chant, and then move on. And this asshole rolls up with his truck, revving his shit, runs through the crowd, puts a grandmother in the hospital, breaks her hip, turns himself in, just like this asshole that shot Garrett, and it gets charged ultimately with a gross misdemeanor. They let him go that night that he turned himself in.
I think
I mean, attempted murder of a group of people, and this is even before. That was the first thing. That was the first account of a vehicle being used as a weapon against demonstrators that had come across my radar. And like I said, this is about 5.5, 6 years ago. But anyway, I'll let you go. But
I think one of the things that we're just going to have to be aware of is the fact that we do have to start protecting ourselves. Yes. I think that for the most part, yeah, we are aware of that. We just have to be a little bit more assertive in that regard.
I agree.
I mean, fact of the matter, if I think about what happened in just outside St. Louis when they were marching, and that attorney couple came out of their house with their firearms and such. Right. I keep telling people, look, if I saw a firearm, she was pointing her gun at everybody.
Yep.
If I saw that, she would have got a bullet in the head. She would have. Because the moment that I see that, she's the threat. She's the threat. Not people walking past her house.
That's right.
She's the threat. And who knows what I mean, you can't wait until after she pulls the trigger. So if somebody saw that, they would have had to take matters into their hands. They would have to protect themselves and the people around them, because she's about to shoot as far as you're concerned.
And she was holding finger on trigger the whole time too. So it's that gun could have gone off at any time.
Only thing I would have saw, I wouldn't even seen the trigger. I wouldn't have had to seen the trigger.
Sure.
I would have just seen her pointing, and that's, you do not aim your firearm at anything you don't intend to shoot. And if you're pointing it at me, you're intending to shoot me. You're going down. You're going down. And that's the attitude everyone really does need to have. No, we do not want that kind of escalation.
That's
no,
right.
We do not want to see people die. But when I say we don't want to see people die, that includes me.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, if these guys see video of the person who tries to use their car as a weapon, and then because they're rolling through hundreds of people. Look, I know that car's dangerous, and I'm never going to say put yourself in front of a speeding car, but like I have been saying, I'm anticipating seeing the video where that driver gets pulled out of the car and dealt with. And I think when we start seeing that video, as opposed to hitting the crowd and then pulling off, or what was that one car that hit the person and then swerved around to hit him again and then took off? Remember that? I mean, like, that's the video we're seeing that gives your average, Chad at home who thinks the Antifas are coming to his house someday. He's going to get out and think it's okay. But if they see that video, that there's repercussions for that choice.
Once the repercussions are made clear, see, it's a very interesting thing. Whenever these things happen, they don't stop until we make a move to stop it. And then the attitude from both right wing and liberals is, y'all both need to calm down.
Yeah.
We got to stop you both because you're going to kill each other. It's like, well,
so true.
Wanted you guys to take care of them before.
Right.
So since you guys didn't, we will. And I think that's the message we got to convey. Since we're not just we are exercising our freedom of speech, and you're saying nothing. You're saying nothing. Matter of fact, you are saying something to us. We shouldn't exercise our freedom of speech that way.
That's right.
There is no way that you will be happy with. So our attitude is, if you're going to be cool with people running us over, then you're going to have to be cool with us handling that person, since you can't.
To me, that just seems like really, really fundamentally basic logic. If you take 2,000 pounds of metal and try to hurl it at me to murder me, I do believe I'm in my rights to do whatever I can to survive that.
I think it's really important to have this conversation, because I don't think a lot of times we have been so conditioned to try to keep things peaceful. That we do not feel that we have the right to protect ourselves. And it was like one of these songs back in the day. There was a song, Michael Franti, he had the band Spearhead at the time. And he had a line, particularly a bohemian kind of brother, but he had a line that says, a piece of peace for you, a piece of peace for me, a piece of peace for every single person that you see. And that was the chorus. But the last line of that chorus was, but I don't act peaceful if you're not that way to me.
That's the crucial point, you know. And okay, so look, in this environment, number one priority has to be we got to get rid of the orange man, right? Isn't that not? And is Biden gonna be whatever? I don't know. What is he? Isn't he MAGA blue? As far as I can tell. Is this that? What are your thoughts on the 2020 election, Daryle?
Well, my attitude is, I mean, when it comes to the 2020 election, we're having it now. Us out in the streets, this is the election.
Yeah.
Whatever they do in November is whatever they do in November. If Trump loses, okay. If Trump wins, okay. Because it's all going to depend on what we do. I mean, my thing has always been, it's like with the documentary, Alt-Right Age of Rage. I make this point all the time. It was supposed to be about Trump's first year. It was supposed to be about how we responded to Trump. Then Charlottesville happened, and they were there. And that changed the entire dynamic of the documentary. It then became, Trump was only in it for maybe a good 10 minutes.
Right.
And the reason for that is that it is not about Trump. It is not about Biden. It's not about the Clintons. It's not about Obama. It's not about any politician out there. They're going to do what they're going to do. Yes, we want good representation in our government. Yes, we do need to get that. Or just whoever is in leadership, not just government, whoever is in leadership. But in the end, the only way we're going to get that is if we understand the relation between us and others in the streets, in the homes, in our jobs, in our schools. You know, it depends on how we all relate to each other. And if there's conflict there, and if there's things that need to be dealt with there, we're not looking at government for assistance. We're not looking at the government to help deal with this. I mean, we should be, but we already know, judging from how they are handling things even in this year, that they can't be relied on.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you have a corrupt president, like a Donald Trump, or you have a corrupt political party that's pretending to be on our side, but won't allow us to vote for whomever it is we want, like the Democratic Party. If that's the deal, we have to choose the lesser of two evils, and you don't want to vote for evil, good's going to kick your ass in the streets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going on right now. This is the election.
Both of the candidates, maybe this is just us as anarchists only care about this, but they have both just arbitrarily said anarchists should be arrested. Not anarchists should be arrested for this or for that. It's anarchists should be arrested. So I don't see a lesser of two evils. and we can't. I mean, of course, the long history of the Biden has been atrocious on anything that if you're out here trying to march with people and be an ally to the movement for Black Lives, and you think that Biden's on that team, I mean, just Anita Hill, his friends with segregationists, and still to this day brags and is proud of his friendships with those scumbags. You know, I mean, so, and I'll just say, well, let me just say this real quick, and then I'll let you go. Actually, no. I'm sorry. I kind of lost it. I'll just kind of let you go. Sorry, brother.
It's got something that we got.
Oh man.
You know how this is how it is. It's like, shit, I gotta say this. Shit, I gotta say that. I mean, there's so much going on right now that we just gotta get it in. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I mean, I've already been dismissive about the whole "we must fight the anarchists" kind of crap, because the sad thing about it is that they are meaning anarchy in the, how should I say, general sense.
Yeah.
They aren't even talking about the political structure of anarchism.
Sure.
They're not talking about any political theory whatsoever. They just see anarchy as chaos.
Right.
And so I ignored it. I really have ignored it. But I'm glad that they gave us the opportunity to for us to be able to talk about what anarchism is. That's why I want to do that Anarchism in America watch party. And for those who don't know what Anarchism in America is, it's a documentary that was on PBS back in 1980 that featured different facets of anarchism, including anarcho-capitalism. You have a guy named Carl Hess that considered himself, he's no longer with us, an anarchist, even though he was reading Murray Rothbard. He was an old Republican, and he got out of the Republican Party, and but it's a good documentary because it shows so many different facets of what anarchism is. Even people who don't even look at themselves as necessarily being anarchists, just being autonomous.
Right.
It's a beautiful. I mean, like I said, it goes back to the 80s, which means they're able to have people that were rolling with Emma Goldman in this interview.
Right. And I wholly endorse you doing a watch party for it. What came to mind was, are you familiar with...
We'll do it next week. Why not?
Are you familiar with it's a 3-part documentary. If people want to see it, it is on our channel. We didn't produce it. We just did a re-upload mirror. But it's 3 parts, and it's No Gods, No Masters, A History of Anarchism.
I gotta look at that.
I'm telling you, Daryle, it gets into the all the early anarchists, Proudhon and of course Malatesta and Goldman and just everybody and what went down with Marx and that kind of stuff. But then it talks about propaganda by the deed and the effects that we're still dealing with today because of the mistakes of propaganda by the deed. It's I think it's by hands down the most impressive, in-depth video sort of documentation of anarchism that I've seen, and it didn't get blocked when we uploaded it to our channel. So
it really shouldn't. I mean, I haven't seen the documentary yet, but it really shouldn't. It really shouldn't. I mean, it's just it's a documentary that just simply tells everybody how we got to where we are today. I mean, and that's important. And it's not just. And you got to remember something else too. For me, it's not like I said before. I don't come by my political observations and my political standing via, philosophy so much. I mean, through political theory or anything like that. I really do just get it from history. So that will be something that's worth me watching, because the important thing for me has always been, how did we get from point A to point B? Right. How were they able to build into what we have today? What lessons can we learn? Which is why I really hate it when people talk about how we're erasing history by taking down Confederate monuments. It says, no, erasing history is the last thing I want to do.
Right.
I would burn the Confederate flag, but not if that flag was made 100 years ago. It's a part of history.
Sure.
And it's kind of like there are things to learn from even the most nefarious of history. I mean, I tell people, hey, look, let's just suspend for a moment, just this moment, how repulsive the Confederacy is. In the end, I have no problem with anybody trying to break away from the United States.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
It's like Robert E. Lee said straight up that the reason why he wanted to, he had to fight for the Confederacy, or basically for him, Virginia, was because he was afraid that the United States of America was going to become an empire if he did not prevail in that war. And that's exactly what we became.
Exactly what we became.
I mean, he was right.
I mean, I think it would have become an empire under him, under his methodology or his thinking as well, and probably an even scarier one. I don't know, but
yeah, I absolutely. The Confederacy would become an empire.
Right.
But what would happen But what had happened is, you got to remember, we didn't see kingdoms that vast before, as vast as America has been.
Right.
Maybe China. You could probably say maybe what Genghis Khan did. Perhaps you could say that. Roman Empire, of course. But what had happened? What would have probably happened after the Civil War if the Confederacy had prevailed? Remember that the United States really wasn't a nation until the 14th Amendment. That's one of the reasons why right-wingers hate the 14th Amendment. States had sovereignty. Everybody asks when I say that, what is it that you mean? Why, if the United States of America was not a country, then what were we? I said, well, what's another word for states? Nation. We were the United Nations. And what happened was what these conspiracy theorists, right wingers, always is afraid of when it comes to things like the EU and all that. They're worried about losing their states' rights, losing their sovereignty to a greater federal power that doesn't have anything to do with what they're doing in their region of the world. And what would have happened? There was all kinds of border wars. Up till the 14th Amendment. So what would have happened simply is that we would have just continued on with the border wars.
For sure.
The Civil War would have broken us up, and there would have been so many other states just breaking away from the United States. The United States probably wouldn't even exist today if the Civil War didn't happen.
Never looked at it through that lens. I would add to that, the 13th Amendment, the exception clause, that took owning people out of, private hands and put it into, that's when the government took over owning the business of owning other people, right?
Right.
And I can see how, and look, let's be real, the ownership and sales of human beings was basically the cornerstone foundation of our economic structure in America.
Yes.
Everything builds off of the purchase and sales and ownership of human beings. And then, so I can see that makes so much sense what you're saying, because once it was taken out of ownership, was taken out of the hands of the plantation owners and put in the hands of the government, it seems logical that would create less sort of border disputes, because you're not having one plantation vying for power against the other.
It would have been even more interesting after if the Confederacy prevailed in the Civil War. It would be even more interesting because the Emancipation Proclamation would still be in effect. The Fugitive Slave Act would not be, and then they will be losing more slaves going across that border, and there would have been that's where a lot of those border disputes will happen, because now they have absolutely no control over what free states would want to do. You want to talk about bloody Kansas then?
Yeah.
John Brown would have rose from the grave pissed off that he was missing everything.
Rest in power, John Brown.
I think this is all speculation. It didn't happen that way. We did become an empire. Right. But the point I'm trying to make is not to big up the damn Confederacy, because going back to it, the Confederacy was still a hard institution.
Going back to or approaching something similar to it is to properly understand it. No leftist, no person calling for the tearing down of these statues wants to ignore. We want to know in much more fleshed out detail exactly what the Confederacy did and how, and understand the nature of, that these statues weren't erected, most of them until the 40s, if not the 60s, right? Some of these, I was born in 71. Some of these statues were erected in 71 and 72. How is that heritage and history, man?
We're not just talking about, this is one of the reasons why I said, I'm going back to the original point. A lot of the things that I've learned that's built up my political philosophy really does just come from learning about how they did it in the first place. There is so much from history that we can learn that can help build. Not just always the negative people, but the positive people as well. Thomas Paine was a founding father that you could say was positive, because if he was around today, they'd probably call him a socialist. They'd probably call him a Marxist. I still, speaking of which, love to find out why Abraham Lincoln and Karl Marx were pen pals. I want to read some of them letters.
You have to. That correspondence is.
I want those letters. I have
Wow.
got to read those.
Oh, you got to. And there's not a whole lot of them, but oh yeah, do take the time to check them out. And
but you talk about this is what the right conservatives do not want us to do. I mean, that whole line about those who forget history are doomed to repeat it.
Right.
They are hoping we don't become history buffs because everything they're doing is what they have been doing for years. I mean, we look at how they're responding to Black Lives Matter. All you got to do is put that in black and white, and it looks like what the Civil Rights Movement.
You had the John Birch Society saying that, which was just a front for the Klan, saying that this is all Marxists that are outside agitating Marxists that are influencing MLK and Stokely Carmichael and these others, right? Which is exactly what they're saying. Outside Antifa agitator Marxists are coming in and influencing the BLM. It's decades of the same line.
Yeah, and and let's not forget, we also had those folks that were supposed to be on our side that inspired Martin Luther King to write Letter from a Birmingham Jail.
Word. You listening, liberals?
More to the point. It inspired Martin Luther King to write Letter from a Birmingham Jail and Phil Oakes to write Love Me, I'm a Liberal.
Oh, man. If you're on this vote blue no matter who, I got to do MAGA blue, read Letter from a Birmingham Jail. Really, everyone's heard that title, but I mean, wow, liberals, progressives, please. It's not going to feel good. You're not going to enjoy reading it. I'm going to just give you a heads up. But please do.
You're not like this Martin Luther King.
No,
you're not. It's required reading for people who want to be jerks to us simply because we say Black Lives Matter. Bill Clinton. You think about you mentioned earlier about Biden working with segregationalists. Now, Kamala Harris, when she brought that up in the debate, I was so damn happy because it was a discussion that we really needed to hear. Even though Kamala Harris is looking like she's going to be his running mate, I'm like, okay, fine. I mean, it is, we really do have to just be, it is what it is at this point when it comes to November.
That's right.
We really do.
Right.
But one of the things that was really important in the discussion is that Pennsylvania governor and former DNC chairman, former Pennsylvania governor as well, Ed Rendell, went on CNN to defend Joe Biden. And he said the Democratic Party will never be progressive. And my attitude about that was, well, why are you asking for progressive votes?
Right.
Strong-arming them. But also, progressives should take that one to heart. They have become conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
No, let me take that back. They have been conservatives, and now that you are saying that you want to do something about that conservatism, they're telling you.
Right.
But to be real, the only reason why there are good people in the Democratic Party is because the Democratic Party is the only vehicle that they feel they have.
Yeah.
AOC said it best. She in any other country, she would never be a Democrat.
Right.
Right. And there's a whole bunch of people who would never be Democrats. So the mission now, if we are going to look at government politics, is that we have to figure out how we can neutralize both the Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah.
And once again, we're out in the streets. This is the election.
That's it.
We can't find a way to do that.
These people that are assuming to ask us to let them represent us, they're both running on these campaigns of I have a better way to oppress what the people want us to do in that representation. It's so blatant and obvious. And so I just think that really it is with the people in your community. That's it. Your friends, your neighbors, your comrades. That's who I'm voting for, right?
Yeah. I think it's going to be more important for us to just big up each other and just push each other forward. whatever. Again, it would be good to see Trump out of there. Yes.
Yeah.
It would be good to see a politician that is receptive to some of the things that we're asking for. But by the same token, I'm not gonna be content. Some of the things is really not good enough.
Yeah.
And if you cannot deliver, if we have to hear Bill Clinton diss John Lewis's friend Stokely Carmichael at his funeral,
That's right, motherfucker.
we know we have a problem.
You know, that was using... It was to push a propaganda point of the good protester versus bad protester trope. It was so foul. It was so... I mean...
No. Let's get a little bit more nuanced. He was
Please
going
do.
good Negro versus bad Negro.
Whoa.
Good Negro versus uppity. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it's not the first time.
Right.
Obama got a taste of that whenever he was dealing with, not even a taste, they gave him a huge helping of it when he was running for president in 08. Hillary Clinton was savaging him over that. And it just shows you who your friends are in the end. When they realize that you're not buying what they have been selling successfully for years, you become a threat, and they treat you just like Rush Limbaugh would treat you or somebody like that. You know, I mean,
yeah.
And again, that's why we're out in the streets today, and that's why people really want the momentum to not fall. We want to see an end game. We want to see an end game in our favor. We can't take any more deaths of people who aren't committing crimes, courtesy of folks who are supposed to be protecting us. You know, I mean, and most importantly, as long as we got the knuckleheads out there who think that this is their time to go and kill people that they don't like, and the police don't do anything about it, you really are setting yourself up for a huge fall if you're in the mainstream of politics, because now you're telling us we're doing this ourselves.
Yeah. Daryle, I got to tell you, man, like, I literally could chat with you all day long, man. I have really enjoyed this conversation. I super appreciate you coming and hanging on Punks for Progress. I really want you to come back again. Let's do this kind of periodically, and because I just love to check in and hear what your thoughts on these things and share. Seriously, how fun this has been. I really appreciate you.
I mean, it's so funny too, because it's like a couple of weeks ago I did a conversation like this with the Bouncing Souls, and we were sitting there reminiscing about the good old days and all that, and then we got into politics. We were going on for like almost 2 hours, and the reason why, there's just so much on our minds.
Yeah. There's
just so much on our minds, and everybody's scared. Everybody is scared because, like I said, they don't want the momentum the momentum of everything that's been going on from George Floyd to Portland to Austin to subside, to stop.
Right.
And we're scared because we know what that means. We know that there's going to be a lot more sacrifices, a lot more deaths. So we got to have these conversations so that we can be prepared for everything that's coming our way now. Because if we are going to prevail, we're going to have to learn how to. This is what this does.
So you brought up the Bouncing Souls, who I happen to love, and being from Reno, Skino hardcore, home of 7 Seconds. I think I'd have to. I'm going to venture to say that Bouncing Souls have been pretty serious fans of 7 Seconds music. If you listen to the two, there's some real similarities. At least in my mind, there always was.
Oh, no. They are. They are.
I'm not seriously not saying they're like some 7 Seconds ripoff, but they're a real homage to that Imposicore kind of that mentality. Remember that stuff, you know?
I mean, if we start getting into the nuances, my thing has always been the NYHC scene, which bled into the New Jersey scene, and we had some bands. You know, a lot of folks probably wouldn't even know them all that well because they weren't from their locality. But, you know, bands like from New Jersey, like Vision, would just make you cry. They were so good. I mean, and back then, And back then, I used to have a public access show called Channel X. Pieces of it is in the All Right documentary, and I have video going back into the 90s that preserves a lot of the things, a lot of the bands, a lot of the music that you wouldn't hear otherwise.
Yeah.
So, and I'm just glad to have it. I was glad to be there. I remember when I was videotaping everything, all these shows, looking around at one point going, you know what? This is what we're going to be calling the good old
and I'll
days.
tell you, one of these days we got to have you come on and just talk about like punk rock and stuff, because that's where I come from. I promoted shows for 25 years, and I had that handy cam, not phone video, handy cam footage. Hours and hours.
I don't mind using the phone now.
No, I love it.
This phone is better than my 8mm.
It's way better. It's way better quality.
But damn it, you can't do it like I used to do it back in the day. I used to have my video camera everywhere I went. I used to carry it around in a suitcase. You can't do that now because now people freak out over the fact that you have a camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they know it's going to be on YouTube or somewhere online. If you did it back then, some folks will get upset, but a lot of folks like the fact that
I get a copy. Can I get a copy? Where am I going to be able to see this?
No, you can't do. You cannot do that now.
Yeah.
You cannot. I stopped once. Once people got mad at me over videotaping some black bloc action, and that's when I realized, okay, I got to stop, because they're right. I had to stop at that point.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate that's the time we live in.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that's the time we live in, but it is.
Realizing these are the times we live in, I think a lot more people are getting out in the street and making a sustained demand for change, which I think is wonderful. And I think that more and more people are listening to you. I think that film has done wonders to educate people. If you haven't seen Alt-Right Days of Rage, please see it. But you were also producer of another award-winning film called Skin. And before we get out of here, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about that.
Yeah, let me break it down. Alt-Right Age of Rage on Netflix. Skin. It's a 20-minute short film. You can see it on YouTube. You can see it on YouTube. And it was directed by Guy Nativ. And I just say, watch it. Watch it. Basically, what he did, because I pick on him about this. It was a demo, because there's a feature film called Skin, in which is about a guy that helped get out of the white power scene, and you can see that on Amazon Prime if you go to Amazon. And it stars Jamie Bell as the guy I got out. Mike Coulter, who played Luke Cage, plays me, and it's also Vera Farmiga and Danielle McDonald. But the short film was basically a demo to get money for that movie.
Oh, gotcha.
And I always tell people, you're dealing with somebody with talent if he puts out something to show you what he can do, and it wins an Oscar.
Right. Oh man. And then so please check out all of that if you're able. If you have Amazon Prime, please go on YouTube, look for Skin 2 and all that stuff. But also, please tell us about the One People's Project. And
One People's Project 20th anniversary was the 4th of July. We're an anti-far organization that basically monitors, researches, and reports on far-right groups, right-wing groups, and individuals in an effort to diminish their ability to function. And we also try to engage in dialogue with everybody in an effort to further that effort, so to speak. Like I said, we have an open door policy for people who want to get out. It doesn't mean we're going to be nice to you all the way through, because if you're still a Nazi,
word,
we do what we do. We can be found at onepeoplesproject.com. We write regular news stories that you can find on idavox.com. This is Idavox. And we also are on Twitter. I'm D. Lamont Jenkins on Twitter and Instagram. One People's Project is One People's Proj, Proj. Idavox is Idavox, OPP. And we have T-shirts. And we have the latest T-shirt, which is says
dope as fuck, which is what they are.
Good night, white pride in Nordic runes or in Icelandic runes, actually. So if anybody wants some t-shirts and stuff like that, just go to our website, onepeoplesproject.com, and I'm done.
And I would say big ups to standupandfightback.bigcartel.com, depending on those shirts. Daryle, dude, thanks so much for hanging out, man. Like, really, let's do this again. Appreciate you. And yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. And please follow Daryle and check it. I mean, the work you do is so invaluable. And I'm just going to say one more time before we get out, I look to you because the way you're able to, again, to stay calm and smile when confronting some of the most darkest, dirtiest, skeeviest, toxic people on the planet is inspiring. And that comes with, it's a testament to educating yourself and being knowledgeable and knowing what you're dealing with. And so I just appreciate you.
Because we're winning. Not because we're winning. May not always look like it, but we're doing it.
Yep, them fascists bound to lose. Daryle, thanks so much for hanging.
Take care, man.
Well, what do you know about that? That was Daryle Lamont Jenkins right here on Punks for Progress, man. How fucking cool was that? Daryle, thank you so much. Please check out One People's Project. Check out the alt-right Age of Rage. Check out Skin. And then check out the other full-length version on Amazon.com. And, if I think my takeaway from the talk, just as we wrapped it up now, is that vote for us. Let's vote for each other. Screw these bourgeois politician motherfuckers. It's us. It's community. It's the workers. It's the people. And that's all we can count on. That's the only people left to rely on. Anyway, thanks so much for hanging out at Punks for Progress. I'm Reverend Aaron. Thank you for watching. And like I always say, thank you to anyone and everyone who does whatever they can to get out in the street and help whoever they can to make life just a little bit better for people. So, thanks for hanging. And we'll see you next time on Punks for Progress.